Quite well for Montoya in third place. Heidfeld not really getting them to stick at the moment. His teammate Frentzen, like the two Ferraris at the front on this intermediate tyre, is making hay while the sun fails to shine here.
Right, they'll have to pit the Ferraris. They've got to pit now. Montoya's just done a 1:34.6 on his dry tyres, and that compares to 1:37.1 for the two lap. Oh, and it's Barrichello spinning the wall.
Yeah, Barrichello, who was due to come in for a drive-through penalty, has hit the wall pretty hard. Now, he's been dropping bits of debris there, Martin, through that sequence of blind bends. We haven't really seen how much he's dropped down, but clearly he's lost his front wing and his rear wing. And, well, that's obviously been a pretty big knock there for Rubens Barrichello. He's out of the race. And will Michael Schumacher be making a stop? We're expecting him in very soon.
Fastest man on the racetrack by some margin last time around was David Coulthard. He's back in 17th place now after that early stop. It'll come back to him as all the wet runners have to stop too. But those that started the Grand Prix on slick tyres, on dry tyres with the grooves, which they are not on the Ferrari, they're the Inters I was telling you about. But those drivers that started on dry tyres absolutely hit it right on the head. Absolutely the right thing to do. Barrichello's going to repair backwards. That's in turn 5. He's lost it through turn 5. I would imagine his tyres were beginning to give up. What happens is, with the tread blocks, the rubber moves around, generates a lot more temperature. Great in the wet, but it soon turns all gooey in the dry conditions, despite how good those tyres are. And that is a terrible mess of that car.
And, well, obviously, we haven't seen exactly what happened to Furman there, but one wonders whether he got connected with Barrichello. Here's Michael Schumacher, though, and obviously Ferrari aware that the safety car is on standby. They want to get this guy in and back out again on the right tyres before that safety car is deployed, if it's going to be.
But they've waited too long, James. They should have pitted a while ago, because Montoya had already taken the lead as Michael turned into the pit lane. And they've really waited far too long on that Ferrari. We think he's got good speed this afternoon. He may be able to make the deficit. Rear left has not gone on properly. It's all falling apart for Ferrari. Barrichello in the wall. Schumacher late in the pits.
And the fastest man on the racetrack at the moment is Fernando Alonso in the Renault. Well, our information is... Oh, he crossed the yellow line, did he? No, he didn't. It's the inside line.
Schumacher up into 5th place.
Yep, the more experienced driver certainly carving his way through. But Kimi Raikkonen, you'd have to say, is not really much more experienced than Mark Webber, but obviously very motivated, very keen to put right what the mistakes of yesterday, where he hit the wall in the morning and then made a bit of a mess of qualifying. Raikkonen on the move here.
The man who didn't do well on that restart, amazingly, as another IndyCar driver, was Villeneuve. He fell quite a long way back from Coulthard. He's currently in 8th place. Villeneuve then panissing the Toyota Button. His teammate is in 10th. But at the moment, Montoya leads from Jarno Trulli, who's had a solid afternoon, hasn't he? Ralf Schumacher then, who started back in 9th place, is currently running 3rd, and we have a Williams 1st and 3rd. That's not quite what we expected, is it, after free practice?
No, certainly they were really struggling for pace throughout Friday, and indeed the messages coming out of the camp after the winter testing were that really the car was slower, in fact, than last year's model. Only Williams of the top 3 teams have brought a new car here to Melbourne this weekend. Ferrari there, you can see Michael Schumacher are using last year's car with slightly modified electronics, but apart from that, it was such a good car, they didn't really need to do too much to it. They will introduce their new car in Imola, the 4th race of the season, and McLaren also have a modified version of last year's car here. They've done a bit more work to it. Whole new back end, new gearbox, rear suspension, and rear aerodynamics on the McLaren. And that's been a great improvement. They've been a lot faster, as you can see now for yourself. Kimi Raikkonen holding Michael Schumacher.
Having just pitted, Michael Schumacher quite heavy on fuel, and that's why he's not able to just zoom up behind the other cars. Louise.
Yeah, Rubens Barrichello has made his way back to the paddock now. Rubens, we're hearing reports that there was some oil on the track. Did that contribute to your accident?
I don't know. I mean, my front tires were running into trouble already because the track was quite dry. I had to still pushing. We were talking on the radio because there was the stop and go that I would receive, and all of a sudden I pushed in a little bit too hard into the corner, and there was this understeer. I could never come back.
We were wondering about the stop and go. Did it make you lose your concentration a bit?
Yeah, the problem was that the car started to go, and I put all the power I had it on the brakes, but I couldn't do anything. I mean, the penalty was there because we moved, but it wasn't much of my fault. But then I was just trying to keep on the track and push, lost out.
Thanks, Rubens.
Thank you, Louise. A shame for Rubens Barrichello. Had an impeccable start to the weekend, really very quick on Friday, but it's all gone wrong for him on race day. Juan Montoya, though, the fastest man on the racetrack at the moment on lap 15. He's pushing very hard indeed, a 1:28.692. He's now 4.5 seconds ahead of Jarno Trulli in second place. Third still Ralf Schumacher. Fourth Kimi Räikkönen. Fifth Michael Schumacher. There he is in the Ferrari, closing down on the back of the McLaren. We've got Mark Webber still holding on in sixth place. Seventh Coulthard.
His fastest race lap, and we know that was a hot pace. So, but he's got to, because he's running out of fuel. He's very low on gas. Montoya surely will have to pit in the next 4 to 5 laps. And we know several of the cars behind him have pitted and will be tanked up, such as Michael Schumacher's Ferrari that you're on. And I am expecting quite a long middle stint with some of these cars. Something like Coulthard, they only fueled it for as long as it took to put the tyres on. So I don't think he had a full hosing down with fuel there on that stop, but Schumacher surely did.
But if you remember, Kimi Räikkönen came in very early into the race. We didn't see how much fuel went into that McLaren. But when he put his dry tyres on, Räikkönen would seem to be a man who's definitely in with a shout of winning this Grand Prix here this afternoon, because he's got the right amount of fuel in the car, probably. He's certainly got the right tyres on. Louise, what can you tell us?
Well, I'm going to ask Ralph Furman what happened. You went off at exactly the same place as Rubens. Was that coincidence or was it his debris?
I'm not sure. I mean, I wasn't pushing 110%. I was still well inside myself, and unfortunately lost the car. But it's been maybe people reports of oil. I didn't see any on the circuit, but we'll have to wait and see till afterwards. But
fifth, with David Coulthard now closing them down in sixth place.
You have to say that although the Ferrari still ended up on the front of the grid, all through free practice and qualifying 1 and up to the end of qualifying 2, it did seem as if most of the teams had closed the gap to Ferrari, didn't they? They didn't appear to have such a big margin. They were flying off the road, Michael in particular. And now look, he's just racing in.
On board with Michael Schumacher, the sole remaining Ferrari in this Grand Prix. Rubens Barrichello crashed out earlier on, and we're getting ready for the restart now. That's Kimi Räikkönen up front.
Did you see the wobble on the front left-hand tyre of Michael Schumacher's car? If you saw that, it tells you two things. Firstly, they're generally running very, very low tyre pressures. Could be down 16 or 17 psi. But in these conditions, on a cold day, behind a safety car running a minute off the pace, they could be down to 10 or 11 psi at the moment, and that is going to give him such a handful when he starts the race, and also the car will tend to bottom out as well, and that is why he's wrestling the steering wheel, desperately trying to generate some heat and therefore some pressure back into those front tyres.
Yes, because the first corner here is a fairly immense braking, isn't it, down into turn 1, and it's very, very easy to get it wrong, as we've seen throughout qualifying. This is going to be a big test, though, for Kimi Räikkönen. It's the first time he's led a Grand Prix at the restart behind a safety car, and a very teammate, Sauber teammate Nick Heidfeld, he's back down to 8th now. Fisichella up to 9th in the Jordan. That's the first we've really heard of him throughout this Grand Prix.
You see, it says that on the statistics that Räikkönen hasn't.
And then today, well, he's had a very, very long pit stop when a right rear wheel wouldn't go on properly, the wheel nut wouldn't engage, and now he's very nearly been taken off the track by Nick Heidfeld. They want to forget this year's Australian Grand Prix in a hurry. A race that she's been on the podium in the past.
I was saying to you, it doesn't show Räikkönen as having pitted. He did pit at the end of the formation lap, so the Grand Prix hadn't started. That's why he didn't register. But we don't know if they put any fuel in Räikkönen's car. You've got to assume they put in quite a lot. Well snaky there into turn 15.
Räikkönen did a 1:29.1. In fact, Michael Schumacher's last lap was very quick. Räikkönen seems to be struggling a little bit with his tyres, doesn't he, Martin?
Yeah, he does. It's very easy to lock. I think there's a different philosophy of how they make the Michelins, which gives them great traction. But also, I think the fronts tend to lock up a little bit easier than the Bridgestones from just watching the cars over the last couple of years. And Räikkönen looking very ragged, it has to be said. We think from the F1 ITV pit group, they put a good 50 kilos of fuel in that car. And that means then he's still got a long way to go before he needs another pit stop. Decent lap times, but suddenly Michael Schumacher looking very menacing.
Yes, indeed. I was just saying, Michael Schumacher's last lap was very competitive, a 1:28.394. He took a full 0.8 of a second out of Kimi Raikkonen, and that's what put him right on his gearbox. Fantastic onboard pictures then from a 5-time world champion.
Very calm on the wheel, isn't he, Michael? And you can afford to be when the car works so well. When I drove that Ferrari, the 2000 Ferrari, it just amazed me how stable the car was, and it does give you supreme confidence, and it just takes away all the ugly stuff under braking and turn into a corner and allows you to place the car much better. But good drive out of the last corner then for Raikkonen, and Coulthard really pushing hard in the background too to stay in touch. He's in third, and Coulthard then the fastest man on the track. He took a half a second out of the leaders, so he's coming up to speed nicely and still pulling away from Villeneuve fourth, Button fifth, Montoya sixth, Panis seventh in the Toyota, and Frentzen in the one and only Sauber remaining now in 8th place. We have, it seems, 14 runners at the moment. No sign of Justin Wilson returning to the racetrack.
We also have a very exciting motor race on our hands. It has been so for the last 24 laps. Who would have predicted
batch early on in the weekend, but now it appears to be working well. Look how much tighter line Schumacher could take in that hairpin to give him a much better look at the final corner, and that it just keeps adding up. You take a tighter line, you get on the throttle earlier, you get a wider turn in, you reduce the angle of the corner, and that just keeps helping you all the way along.
Well, this is something that we're expecting to see quite a lot of in 2003. Kimi Raikkonen and Michael Schumacher, with David Coulthard also in attendance. Raikkonen's been here before, French Grand Prix last year at Magny-Cours, where he led for quite a few laps and then had the misfortune to be the first on the scene of a Toyota engine blow-up. Oil on the track, Raikkonen got caught in it, didn't see it, and ran a little wide. Michael Schumacher came down the inside, put a really rather brutal chop on him as he went through. But I think Michael learned something about Kimi that day, and they've both got mental pictures of each other, I should imagine, Martin, now, about what they're likely to do in this sort of situation.
Yeah, you have to say Schumacher looks the calmer. It's déjà vu, as they say, from last year's French Grand Prix. Just 2.5 seconds then between the first 3 cars. And Villeneuve now some 5 seconds behind Coulthard in 4th. And look how stable the Ferrari is. He doesn't have to correct the car on the exit of the corner at all. He's merely just turning it in the right amount.
In the second of the Minardi Cosworths, he's currently running in 11th place, just behind Jarno Trulli. So the car obviously going quite quickly this weekend. It's just a bit of a shame for Justin Wilson that his has been a little unreliable. Michael Schumacher, though, getting a little bit closer to Kimi Raikkonen now.
Schumacher's much quicker under braking. What
of his race effort disappear, and goodness knows how many racing positions. We'll find out in a moment when the computer sorts out the race order. We'll tell you exactly how many places he's lost as Schumacher closes up once again on the back of Kimi Raikkonen.
Yes, unless you know you're going to have separation between your 2 cars in a Grand Prix, you cannot possibly, with one pit crew, Michael getting that all wrong, you cannot possibly schedule them to stop on the same lap. That surely was a mistake.
Frustrations up and down the pit lane here today. The debutants having a bit of a tough start. De Matter into the sand trap. Ralph Furman has crashed, and now it seems Justin Wilson isn't going to get any more laps in this Grand Prix. Only then Antonio Pizzonia of the first-time drivers still going. He's in 10th place in the sole remaining Jaguar.
You know what's great? I've no idea who's going to win this Grand Prix, because Montoya, look, in 4th place, has refueled recently and now just 12 seconds adrift. Michael Schumacher lost out heavily last time around to both McLarens, and he's now on an absolute sprinter of a first sector, a full 2-3 tenths quicker than Raikkonen. That's why he's suddenly back on his gearbox again. Schumacher responding to those 2 cars around him, in front, one behind, suddenly putting a bit of a sprint on. The McLaren's working well, and Michael Schumacher having to respond, and this is going to be the fastest lap of the race. I think it's going to be a new lap record. You can see the vortices were coming off the rear wing of that McLaren. There's a bit of moisture in the air. Formula 1 cars love this. The cold air goes in, the charge is denser, they can put a bit more fuel in, you get more power, the tyres are working nicely. It's really good to be driving a Grand Prix car in these slightly cool. That is a new lap record, and look, right up behind Raikkonen now.
We just got a glimpse of Nick Heidfeld, the Sauber driver, walking in. Had a really electric start to this Grand Prix, but a rather disappointing conclusion We're being told from race control an incident involving car number 20 is under investigation by the stewards. That's Olivier Panis, and that's bad news for the Toyota driver because he's currently lying in 5th place. Louise.
Still down at the Minardi garage. They haven't given up yet. They'll get points for perseverance if nothing else. They are going to try and get Justin back out on the track. Obviously any hope of a really good result has now gone away, but I think the team would like to get information about this car. You said earlier on they haven't done much testing, but it seems to be going away from him, unfortunately.
That perseverance was always a quick driver, but not if his car won't work. Raikkonen then just 0.3 of a second ahead of Michael Schumacher. Coulthard's dropped off behind them now. He's 3.2 behind them, and he's now putting on a bit of a sprint. It's a real yo-yo going on amongst the top 3, as meanwhile Montoya now 9.8 seconds behind the leading trio. Panis 5th, Frentzen 6th, Fisichella 7th, Trulli 8th, Verstappen in the Minardi, Verstappen 9, Pizzoni in the Jaguar 10, Mark Webber's out of it, his teammate. Alonso 11th, Ralf Schumacher 12th, Villeneuve and Button down in 13th and 14th after that crazy pit stop.
Yeah, they dropped 6 places as a result of that. Michael Schumacher just having another look down the inside of Kimi Raikkonen. Well, there were long faces yesterday afternoon after qualifying as we look at Schumacher. Lovely sideways shot from his mirror. See how he sits down in the car under braking. Long faces at McLaren yesterday were enormously frustrated by this single shot qualifying, this new innovation, simply because both drivers didn't get the best out of their laps. Kimi Raikkonen made a mistake and had a deflating tyre as a result of it towards the end of his lap, which dropped him down to 15th on the grid. They really felt they should have been up in the top 6, but it hasn't really mattered come race day. An inspired move by Ron Dennis and his men to bring Kimi Raikkonen in for fuel and tyres before the Grand Prix even started, when it was clear that the track was drying out. We've got beautiful sunshine here now at Melbourne, and that has put Raikkonen right up front.
Yeah, but you could always rely on changeable conditions to give you an unusual and unpredictable Grand Prix. It's always the best way. Maybe the new rule should just be they should randomly water a couple of corners and not tell the drivers till they go around on the outlap or something.
Or have Grand Prix in Manchester, where it rains pretty regularly. Anyway, Ferrari are out in the pit lane, so Michael Schumacher is going to be the first of these two to stop. It may be because Ferrari think that Michael is faster. We've seen him set the fastest lap of the race so far, and by putting him out of sequence here, hoping to capitalise a little later on. Very relaxed down there in the Ferrari pit as they wait for their man, just glancing up at the corporate guests who are glaring down at them from the boxes.
Michael wiping his visor there, obviously getting a bit of oil out of the back of the McLaren. Ted.
It's undoubtedly the case, Martin, that Michael is being brought in because he can go quicker when he comes out. I'm quite surprised, actually, that McLaren aren't bringing Kimi Raikkonen in as well. They might have fancied their chances with a head-to-head with the mechanics. Maybe what do you think?
I wonder, because they were going to so much trouble to clean out the side pods of the Ferrari there. Oh, Michael nearly crossed the yellow line. We've already seen Panis is about to have a drive-through penalty for crossing that yellow penalty line. But I wonder if the car was just getting a little bit warm. They were certainly prepared to give up some track time there.
Out of the box, there's Michael Schumacher. So the tactics definitely worked, and the pit stop sequence has gone through. They've both, well, certainly Raikkonen and Coulthard are fueled to go to the finish. No doubt about that, judging by the amount of time it took to put fuel in the car. And you can see Kimi Raikkonen, he'll be delighted to see that Heinz-Harald Frentzen is between him and Michael Schumacher. Juan Montoya is leading the race at the moment as Fisichella makes a pit stop on lap 34. Raikkonen is second, Frentzen is third, Michael Schumacher fourth, Coulthard fifth, Trulli sixth. But the men who are looking really strong at the moment are the McLaren men.
Yes, indeed. Montoya pitted then back on lap 16. So we're now on lap 33. So Montoya getting quite a long way through his fuel as Fisichella joins the racetrack in 10th place, it would seem. I would have imagined now, with so much fuel going in those McLarens, you've got to expect that Michael Schumacher should cruise quite quickly up behind Raikkonen. If he doesn't, we'll know for sure the McLaren really does have more pace this afternoon.
Yes, and also possibly that the Ferrari is carrying still a reasonable amount of fuel. Can Michael Schumacher, he surely has to stop again this afternoon. Well, it's all going to play out, certainly pushing very hard. The world champion on lap 35 of this 58 at the moment. Frentzen is paying him to very high 28s or even low 29s, and this is good news for both Montoya and Raikkonen in front of him, because at the moment Frentzen, although he's got a very light fuel load on that Sauber, and it's only a matter of time before he makes a pit stop, at the moment Schumacher just doesn't seem to be able to get past him.
No, and Raikkonen's not had a good lap. He's made a mistake somewhere in the first sector, and that is why the Ferrari, despite being tucked up behind the Sauber, is that much closer to him.
One of the reasons, Martin, why Schumacher will find it difficult to get past Frentzen is because they've got the same engine. The Sauber customers of Ferrari using the engine from last year's 2002 Ferrari, which is pretty much the same one that Michael's using here, and the same gearbox. So an unusual situation this, and certainly any suggestions that as Frentzen dives into the pit.
We'll have to wait and see, but there we are. That must be Michael Schumacher, of course, because Barrichello has visited the wall and is out of the Grand Prix. And suddenly Raikkonen struggling a little bit. He did a 31.1 last time around, a very slow lap time. Is Kimi Raikkonen developing some kind of mechanical problem in that McLaren, or a handling imbalance, because he's very, very slow at the moment?
Yeah, that's a lot of time to give away, and you can see that the Ferrari is voraciously eating away at the distance between the two cars. Listening out, can you hear anything? I'm just listening. The engine sounds like it's on 10 cylinders, and there sounds like a full complement of gears in the cog box. So very, very hesitant on the throttle, Kimi Raikkonen. Maybe it's just a balance problem. Maybe his tyre pressures are out. He's lost engine power. Look, he's lost engine power because he's really having to defend his line. I'll be amazed if Michael can get through there. There's not a lot of space, is there? And that was excellent driving from Raikkonen, if a touch rude. I bet Michael Schumacher wasn't expecting that. Well, we've heard a lot about Kimi Raikkonen, huge expectations on his shoulders. Quite a tough character. In his first season with Sauber, he put Ricardo Zonta in a very, very difficult position in Canada, and he did it again to Michael Schumacher here. Well, check this out.
Nothing wrong with it. You're allowed to make one move across the racetrack. He's on the inside line, and he does not have to let Michael Schumacher just pass him and go through the corner. He's perfectly entitled to squeeze him and use the energy and forces. But unfortunately for Raikkonen, he has a drive-through penalty. He has to come in the pit lane, go through at 80 kilometers per hour, 50 miles an hour, and that will cost him badly. It will probably put him behind Montoya. So the luck of Michael Schumacher is about to take the lead.
Yeah, almost certainly will cost Raikkonen the race. Very difficult to see how he'll be able to recover that. It'll take about 15 seconds out of his race time, and that'll well, you can see what that will do to the relationship between him and Schumacher on the track. Don't forget, Montoya still 14 seconds ahead of Raikkonen on the racetrack, but we believe he has another stop to make, and as you say, Martin, frustration down at McLaren, I would think, and elation in the cockpit of Michael Schumacher's Ferrari. The guy, just whatever he does, it just turns to gold, doesn't it?
Yeah.
He is the luckiest guy in Formula One.
But at the same time, Raikkonen's still not that fast for some reason, and I still believe he's developing a bit of a gremlin somewhere. His penalty is for speeding in the pit lane. Suspect he didn't get the car slowed down enough on the way in, or get the button pressed early enough. And that is a crucial mistake by a driver, something you shouldn't be doing these days, but it was for speeding and not crossing the penalty line at all.
Well, Michael Schumacher will be aware. The team will have told him that the McLaren driver has to come in for a stop, so he will be aware of that. He will not be looking to make any attack on Kimi Raikkonen. And Raikkonen's pace at the moment dropping off slightly, 0.4 of a second in the first lap. He could do his teammate Coulthard a favour here, couldn't he, Raikkonen, by just holding Michael up a little bit.
He's got to come in within 3 laps to serve that penalty, and you're not allowed to stay out there all afternoon and do it right at the end. But Coulthard's not fast either. You know what I think's happening? I think they're going through that zone with the Michelins where they put a lot of fuel in, and the Michelins dip and then come back again. We've seen it so often with them, because both McLarens really are off the pace at the moment, and meanwhile Montoya is absolutely flying up front in the 1 minute 27s, while then Raikkonen goes in then to serve his penalty. Coulthard, he will get out, I believe, in front of David Coulthard. But has Michael Schumacher got a stop yet for a splash and dash
lane, and for that got a drive-through penalty? But just to show you that they're all capable of doing it. Michael Schumacher looks like he's damaged his floor, Martin, We saw him run wide a few laps ago, and I wonder whether that's part of his...
Front of David Coulthard. Coulthard, though, just 3 seconds behind him, and the pair of them are 14 seconds behind Michael Schumacher. We think Coulthard can go to the end. We know Montoya can go to the end without refueling. What about Michael Schumacher? Not getting a lot of help there from Pitzonia, who he's trying to lap. Michael Schumacher leads from Montoya. Coulthard, truly, Raikkonen up to 5th place despite flying off the road, and that's because Alonso pitted for fuel. 6th is Frentzen, 7th Alonso, Ralf Schumacher 8th, Fisichella, Villeneuve and Button. VAR somehow or other thrown it away with pit strategy and problems. Pitzonia and Verstappen, your 13th and final runner.
So Ferrari chasing their 160th Grand Prix victory here this afternoon. And, whoa, that's part of the barge board. They carry on losing bits of the car. Now he seemed to be struggling there, Martin.
It's looking like a Meccano set that hasn't been put together properly. Bits falling off it left, right and centre. He did bump down the grass. He might get black flag for that. He might well get black flag. He's got bits hanging off both sides of it, and that will seriously affect the handling of that Ferrari. So if Montoya and Coulthard will certainly be alerted to that, they've got to push all the way to the end of the Grand Prix, because that Ferrari is beatable.
Well, looking at it now, you'd have to say it is. This is the 2002 Ferrari. They haven't brought the new car out yet. We'll see that probably in April. We're told it's about 0.6 of a second a lap faster, but look at the fight Schumacher's having.
And how did that come off? It just fell off of its own accord, didn't it? I don't really... Yes, it did. That's strange. I mean, he bumped along the grass, but it was just with the 2 left-hand side wheels. Maybe he's been off the road at some other point, unseen by the TV camera. But that's very unusual for that to happen. And it's just held on by a little guy rope at the back, which is even worse than it falling off altogether.
A little bit of anxiety then in the Ferrari garage, and we cast our minds back a few years to the Malaysian Grand Prix, where Ferrari had a barge board infringement. Barge boards became very much the talk, really, over that period of time. Almost cost them a world championship because they weren't in compliance with the rules. But here today, it's a loose barge board that's causing Ferrari headaches. 14 laps to go. Is it going to detach itself, or is he going to get black flags? The rules of the sport say that if you've got bits of your bodywork hanging off, the race director can call you in, a black flag, call you into the pits because you are a danger to other competitors. And you consider him a danger to other competitors?
He looks a danger to himself at the moment. He's really fighting that car. That's both barge boards gone. I think what's trailing under the other side is the remains of the left-hand side barge board, and that piece of carbon fibre controls the air very dramatically and divides it between that air that must go through the radiators. There's no fans on these cars, the air's driven through them, and the rest of the air that goes over flag. That means you've got damage to your car, you've got a problem with your car, you must call in at the pit. You can stop at your own pit. It's not a flag where you have to stop and see the clerk of the course. But Michael Schumacher will fall back into 3rd place because Montoya is only 13 seconds behind him. Coulthard 2.3 behind Montoya. Now it's turning into a straight fight between Montoya and Coulthard. Raikkonen is 4th. I think Schumacher will come out in front of Raikkonen as long as they don't have too much drama cutting that. Has it fallen off by its own accord now, or is it still hanging in there somewhere? Ted, what can you see?
Martin, the barge board has actually come off, so he did have to make another fuel stop. The fuel goes in. This is fantastic news for Williams and for McLaren. New tyres go on. Nigel Stepney taking a good old look at it just to make sure it's roadworthy. But how is this? Is this a Ferrari making a bit of a duff-up of strategy?
And Raikkonen might go through past him. He's done with pit straight now. Michael Schumacher can see him. There is Kimi Raikkonen, who goes up into 3rd place. Montoya leads the Australian Grand Prix. This is lap 47 of 58, and we've got real drama here. Well, I said at the start of this race, you've got to go back to September 2001 for the last time that somebody other than this man led the Formula One World Championship. Could we see something different here today? He's chasing his 4th consecutive Australian Grand Prix, but he's really up against it now with 12 laps to go. Montoya's ahead. 2.4 seconds behind him is David Coulthard, and then Kimi Raikkonen and Michael Schumacher are close together.
Yes, Raikkonen is ahead.
3 of the most exciting drivers in Formula One coming very, very close together. David Coulthard, though, at the front. Let's not forget about him. He can sense his 13th Grand Prix victory around the corner. and he must be listening out to every part of his car.
Right.
And look now, this is great. This is fantastic.
They're lapping all of them now in the 129s, apart from Michael. That next batch are some
unbroken string of podiums, 53 in total, stretching back to Europe 1999. He's fourth at the moment. Is this going to be that progress broken? Lovely onboard shot there. Before
they'll need a little bit of fuel in that Ferrari at the end, otherwise it's within the rules at the end of this Grand Prix. Comfortably. VAR threw it away by going for a three-stopper this afternoon, and they didn't fuel long for that middle stint, and that's what's cost them, I think, some World Championship points.